All right, we are back with more NBA coverage, and in this one, the two greatest words in sports are Game 7. Covering that iteration in the Western Conference Finals of the 2025-26 playoff campaign in the NBA. And man, there was so much on the line for these teams. Two of them who are legitimately trying to build their own kinds of dynasties. The amount of youth and the amount of talent that both of these teams possess, as I said, have them set to be around for quite a while. But the goal was to try to win the rights to at least make an appearance this year. And there are a lot of different historical connotations to this. A few include the fact that the Spurs entering this game were 1-5 all time in Game 7s on the road, and it was their first Game 7 they faced in the playoffs since the 2019 first round against the Nuggets. On the other end, generally speaking, this would be the fifth Game 7 of this particular postseason, the most in quite some time. And it was the first with at least the top two seeds in a particular conference since the 0-2 Lakers vs. Kings Western Conference Finals series that obviously came under fire with the entire scheme surrounding Tim Donaghy and all of these different gambling picks on these games. That's where that stems from. And again, a highly polarizing, controversial series in every sense of the word. You were not trying to get a repeat of that here, but you were looking for some exciting basketball all the same. And taking this into account, this is the second Game 7 as well between two teams who finished with at least 60 or more wins in the regular season since the 1981 Eastern Conference finals between the 76ers and the Celtics. And the Celtics took them down, started out what was a dynasty of their own in the 1980s, rivaling that of the Showtime Lakers. So there was so much to look forward to in this game. And between these two teams, they have fought and battled to reach this particular moment in time. You were hoping that they'd leave everything out there on the floor, because either way, you are going to the finals or you're going home. There is no other alternative. There is no other way to get yourself out of the situation. You have to confront it. And it's what makes a game like this so thrilling and yet captivating for people to watch all the same. Because it literally ends off the series in every way. It will end a season, and it can also just as much give that life to the everlasting pursuit of trying to secure that Larry O'Brien trophy. But as for the game itself, they did a pretty interesting thing, the Thunder, to start it out. They opted to go with Cason Wallace as a starter, in which they previously did that and lost by 21 in Game 4, which was interesting to say the least. Obviously, that game might have been a bit of an aberration. A little bit. And that was not a great precedent to have if you were Cason Wallace. But I'd imagine that they trusted his defense and his ability to shoot those two things in conjunction with each other entering this game. And they brought McCain down to the bench. My thinking with that was that, hey, no matter what may happen with the starters, because the productivity amongst them all combined has been shaky over the first 6 games. And that is being very generous. Yet McCain can always provide you with that spark off the bench. He is just a flamethrower. So if you need to bring him in and bail your offense out, then by all means, the opportunity is there. The Spurs, on the other hand, would keep the same lineup, where in pretty much the first few minutes of the game, as I essentially noted, they played with their fucking hair was on fire. They were not fazed by the moment at all. You know, all the talk about their inexperience in dealing with Game 7s and elimination style games of this magnitude, and the fact that they were so young of a team, while also having people consistently say that they hadn't necessarily faced the scars of being in a long-standing playoff run and potentially losing it all before resetting and getting back to the drawing board. Maybe not, but that is not something that mattered to them, clearly. With all their players, including Victor Wembanyama, setting the tone early and getting himself a couple buckets after a very tough game 6 where he absolutely struggled. They made it a point to get to him early, get it to him early, and they did. And it worked out beautifully for them because once that happened, it opened up the floodgates for everyone else. Stephon Castle maintained that aggressiveness. Devin Vassell was getting easy looks in the mid-range, and the entire paint was just easy pickings for that entire team. It got to the point where Chet Holmgren got man up, posterized by this man Victor Wembanyama on a late cut to essentially cap off what was a 10-4 run at that point of time. I'm like, no, that just happened to Chet Holmgren, who at the very least is a player that literally finished right behind Victor Wembanyama in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Now, maybe with that being a late contest, poor guy, right? He got fucking jammed all over by Wembanyama. That shit was disgusting. And that was to start the game. If he could potentially try to muster a bit of aggression from that, take the moment on the chin, and go back at Wembanyama, maybe there wouldn't be much of an issue. Foreshadowing. But aside from that, the Spurs were just all over the Thunder in many ways. You see, the Thunder team is going to traditionally benefit far more from getting out in transition and forcing the turnovers. Well, by a certain point in the first quarter, with the rate of shots that were being made by the Spurs team, and also the transition opportunities that they had that led to open baskets on the other end, they were actually forcing the Thunder to be very, and I mean very uncomfortable in general. It wasn't just about making SGA that way anymore, even though occasionally every now and then in this quarter he'd get his, and you figured that he would come out with that energy being in a Game 7 and facing this scenario before. Hell, this team, in a way that you can't make up, literally had to go through 2 Game 7s themselves, hearing some of the same noise to get to the NBA Finals and win their first one as the OKC Thunder last year. Same noise. Same team, largely speaking. And frankly, this hasn't been anything new for them. So you question why they were down 18-8 before the halfway mark of the first quarter in that realm. The shooting was just not where it needed to be for them. And you would expect that to change with them being at home, but it was very, very scary to see them start out that way. If you are a Thunder fan, right? You're expecting them to come out with the same energy than the Spurs are. And yet again, in every one of the last few games, win or loss, it has been the Spurs coming out with these blistering hot starts. Regardless of how you finish a game, at some point that is going to do something to the psyche, right? You want to respond. And they just weren't able to, at least for a little while. Up until you had the SGA distribution off of potential double teams start to work in their favor a little more. And it was there where they started to inch back into this game. Plus the addition of having Jared McCain in. As soon as he went in, the man was already making an impact all over the floor. Got themselves 5 quick points off of his shooting alone, and all of a sudden, it was back down to a 9-point ball game. The intensity on the defensive end started to ramp up for them as you had them strong arm defenders and other ball handlers for potential rebounds to beat them on the offensive glass and also pick up some steals of their own to at least dictate their own style for enough time to make a true impact in this game. And that is what the people had been waiting for. So as they started to clean that up, the game got a little bit closer. At least manageable enough for the Thunder to weather the storm. They, no pun intended, right? Like, they have the ability to come back from those things, and they've done it before in the series. So even with them getting up to 31-20, they went on a brief run to close out the quarter, and thus, with Jared McCain literally having to put up 8 points off the bench alone, even if it's something that, hey, you want more of your starters to make more of an impact, the bench production had been immaculate for most of the series, with the lone exception being Game 6, where the Thunder were outscored in bench points for the first time in this series overall. It had been automatic, and McCain, once again, providing them with that great shooting from the perimeter to put some pressure on this San Antonio defense, Not always rely on having Victor Wembanyama roam around, and instead make him and this defense work through their rotations to contest these shooters, which they, by that point, had started to deteriorate in, at least just a little bit. But hey, a 32-25 lead here for the Spurs, not too shabby for them to set the pace, but also it was anybody's game. And this is what this entire series has been. Even when you look at the results of each and every single one, and especially the past few looking like blowouts, there have been so many battles within the larger game itself that have had to be won first before you even get to the final stage of everything. And the team who could stave off most of those obstacles ended up winning the entire thing. So by no means was this game over. There was still work to be done, but the Spurs were off to an incredibly hot start. And then, SGA had to come out, especially in that second quarter, and prove exactly why he's a two-time MVP. Did we really expect anything else from him, or anything less? It has not been a great series for SGA overall, but that never took away from just what he can do when he starts to get into a rhythm. They didn't change around their defense much. They still tried to keep a single man on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and they were willing to send the double teams over when he started to penetrate into the paint a little more. But the shots that he took were the pure shots that we're so adjusted to seeing SGA take and make, with that rise in the mid-range, on the baseline, at the elbow, in the restricted area, you name it. He was firing, he was hitting his shots at an elite level. And that efficiency really helped out the Thunder a lot, especially in the second quarter. I mean, right from the tip, you have him just taking on these wing defenders like it's nothing. And he is just settling into a rhythm immediately in this game. Stopping on a dime and catching the defense off guard for three-pointers, he was getting in his bag throughout this entire quarter. And no amount of defensive coverage could stop it at any point of time. So it was something that the Spurs obviously still had to deal with throughout this quarter. And there was no avoiding it, no matter how hard they try. So slowly, with him doing that, with the pressure being applied by him, opening up avenues for shooters to shoot, or potential roamers to the paint to do their things in short space with quick decisions, the Thunder started to charge back into things a little bit. Especially through the non-Wembanyama minutes, which were, again, as important as ever, like I said. In this game, in the final game of the series and potentially your season, now was a better time more than ever to take advantage of those minutes at a high level. And the overall numbers when Kornet was on the court for them would say as much. But they had to keep that same energy going. They could not let up. And they very much settled into that, with them going on essentially a 20-5 run throughout the second quarter. It was all based off of snap decisions. And you even had one where, as they're shortening the lead to 4 with around 4.5 minutes left, you just get Lucian Dort coming out into the paint and making a very snap decision with a push pass over to Jalen Williams for just a routine shot. Like practice, like clockwork, just like that. Even with Wembanyama seemingly in the area, it wasn't enough because they caught him right before he could even get his hands up to contest the shot. And again, it's very simple in nature, but sometimes that is what you need in order to really attack a player of that kind, a defense of that kind that can either funnel to him or trust their own individual defense. You got to make them work for it in ways, but you also have to give them what they aren't necessarily expecting from you, if that makes sense. Because trying to overcomplicate things are leaving those defenders in the same spots, and it's just going to be easier for them to have a swatted shot produced from that territory. So there was just, they had to settle it down a little bit. Just keep on repeating the same measure over and over and over again until they prove to you, quite frankly, that they could stop it. And however you want to judge that, you're more than inclined to. All I know is that, hey, with Jalen Williams, the Arkansas Jalen Williams, in this game, he hit another key shot for them to take their first lead of the game. After being down and out for quite some time, just like that, they were back in it. It might have took a long period of time in this quarter, but this team, again, through all of these different paths obstructing the overall route to their potential championship run here, they just remain resilient. And you have to respect that about a team. That doesn't mean that the Spurs are going anywhere, though. Even with them doing that, and even with them starting to get to the free throw line a little bit as both teams got into the bonus towards the tail end of the second quarter, you did get a brief run from the Spurs. Just going with 6-0 here, as you had De'Aaron Fox, or well, 7-0 rather, as De'Aaron Fox, who had been struggling offensively in the series in terms of his jump shooting. He was up for the challenge in this game. And it was about timely shots for him. It doesn't get much more timely than you hitting a three-pointer as the shot clock is winding down, like it was with around 54 seconds left in the half, and with the Spurs now trailing by 4 after having that large run and lead for a majority of the game to this point. And the physicality continued for them. Even with Victor Wembanyama in the second quarter being cooled down a little bit from his start. And you got stretches of this in the first half where you could kind of see him getting flustered a little bit. There was a play earlier, for example, even during that run, where he, in an attempt to get the ball down the court, he was taking so long to dribble, and you had Cason Wallace apply pressure to him in the backcourt. It eventually led to a Cason Wallace foul. Things like that, though, you're expecting him to just pass the ball on. It should be easy. It should be simple. And yet, the pressure in that moment, the atmosphere, that crowd is genuinely one of the more violent, chaotic ones in the entire NBA. And so he may have very well been feeling that in that moment. They also had Isaiah Hartenstein applying far more pressure on him. He was still seeing multiple bodies in terms of trying to keep him off the glass, and that was a large reason, quite frankly, why the Thunder were dominating the offensive glass in the first half. Even if the shots might not have been going down at such a high rate, You are keeping the biggest of big men in this current NBA, no, literally, out of the fucking painted area and just tempering his ability to just go up with one long, gigantic arm and snag down a board away from your particular team. It's just that simple. That had to happen. And it was working for him for a long time, but that late slip of 7-0 allowed the Spurs to take back the lead and go up 56-53 heading into the halftime break. They had mentioned at a point that in the entire postseason up to this point, the Spurs remained undefeated when leading at halftime, whether they were blowing teams out, whether it was a short lead akin to the same one that they held in Game 4 before things got chaotic, the same one they held in Game 6 before things got even more damning for this Thunder team. They'd been undefeated up to that point in the regular season, or in the postseason. Again, you have to finish, and you have to finish strong, but that's a pretty telling number as to how things were going. And still, you got that second quarter of just pure shot making from SGA. Like, literally, he was all over the floor making an impact. He didn't even have to rely that much on free throws at all. These were just him getting to his spots, finally settling into the rhythm of the series for potentially the first time out of all of these games, and making his presence felt. The fact that the starters overall in this game had not been doing great as a collective unit, and they were still down by 3 in the halftime break, that showed just as much promise for OKC. And so once more, we enter the third quarter with it still being largely anyone's game. Largely. And in a Game 7 like this, it's only inevitable that you are going to have the stars rise. And for a point in this third quarter, you got them, Wembanyama and SGA, literally going at each other. No, literally. With SGA making some tough-ass fadeaway jumpers on the baseline and in that 2-point area of the court over the outstretched arms of Victor Wembanyama. And they were clean. They might have been rainbow shots. It might have been difficult for him to see. But he was quick, and he remained effective throughout this time. When he is settled into that, there is very little that you can do, because it is at that point where you see just how he is labeled as one of the best scorers in this current game. One of the most elite scorers. You can have him find a number of different ways to attack you. He'll find a way. He'll continue beating you with the same punch, and he can always switch it up at any point of time. You may never see it coming, and yet he'll still end the game with the typical output that he has. And that's kind of the feeling that you got ultimately, even with the guards and Vassell at times for the Spurs team trying their best to guard him directly. Because what can you do? At the same time, even with him cooling down a little bit, it didn't stop Victor Wembanyama from rising to the challenge as well, taking him on, making a two-way play, hitting a big-time shot and a dunk on the other end before proceeding to block the living hell out of one of his shots on the other end. Just trading blows back and forth. And that would be a microcosm, in a way, for how things would go for the rest of the game in terms of punch-counterpunch. That is the best way to describe these two teams. It's been like that all year long, and you got to see that in this game. Overall. Now, yes, it got testy at some times, because at some point, Caruso has to stop fouling the living shit of out of Stephon Castle in open space. It has to slow the hell down at some point. But largely on the court, man, it was just exciting to watch. They had a 7-3 run at this time, the Thunder did, but that would change on a dime with Julian Champagnie also over the past couple games, game 6 included. I mean, you have him finally, for the first time in this series, really stepping up to the plate and having his shooting on full display. It had largely been absent in games 1 through at least 4, and here he was in game 7 once again, in this third quarter particularly, being a thorn in the Thunder side. Because they were trying so hard to close down on Wembanyama, and that had been the case for most of the game, right? You want to keep him away from the paint as much as possible. You want to render him as ineffective as possible. And while he was hitting some threes, you'll live with him taking those. While he was still getting his way on a couple occasions, it might not have been to the same level in some of his other games throughout this series where he had high scoring outputs. And so they were still daring these shooters to shoot. Champagnie was hitting them motherfuckers. Champagnie was hitting them up. I mean, bang after bang after bang. He couldn't be stopped. And it also helped that Dylan Harper, who again was available, also came into this game and largely contributed some of the same shit. Even Victor Wembanyama was hitting three-pointers. And once again, when he is jacking up something like that, and he's hitting them at an elite level, there isn't much that a team can do. From that point onward, with a lot of turnovers also contributed by the Thunder in this same time due to the kinds of pressure being put on by these guards, the Thunder had yielded a 17-4 run for the Spurs, as Champagnie was building himself quite a quarter here. And the defense as well from some of these guards, especially Dylan Harper, with him having to deal with some of the potential flops and things of that nature. He, as an individual guy, was holding his own a lot in this third quarter. And I just had to, give him some shine there. Because again, this man is a 20-year-old rookie, just turned 20. And you're asking him to guard these kinds of players in this high leverage game. And he is just holding his own consistently. You can't ask for much more than that. You really can't. Slowly, the game was starting to slip away from the Thunder, though. You're making all these routine mistakes. This is not a team that consistently turns the ball over, and yet, once again, like the first quarter, they were just falling into this rut on several occasions. So they most certainly wanted to clean things up towards the tail end of the quarter. And again, luckily, with Kornet usually having these problems, they had him subbed in again. And it was at that point where immediately a bit of a run started. They, again, could not really shoot the ball as effectively. Lucic Dort, for this entire series, has been an absolute no-show. The fact that they mentioned that, at a certain point, entering this game, he was 4 of 24 shooting or something like that from the three-point line. It was bad, bro. It was bad, and it continued in this game. But still, you had other shooters step up and rise to the plate, because at the end of the day, someone had to assist Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, he literally gave it everything until he could not. And I'll make that point once again. If you have criticisms of that sort, he tried. Somebody else had to help him. And luckily, at times, you got it. I mean, Alex Caruso, even if the numbers are going to show it, he can be a savvy veteran. And sometimes it's about making those well-timed plays, which he did on a couple occasions over the course of their own response. Then Jalen Williams, the Arkansas man, got within 2, finishing off a 10-3 run at that point with literally, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at the top of the key, he is being doubled because you have help running over at essentially the last couple of seconds to force an uncomfortable shot. And luckily, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was able to, before stepping into it, see Jalen Williams in time, and he got it from the left wing of the court, greened it. Instant timeout. Because now that momentum was riding high, the fans were consistently in it, and they were really getting loud once again. So, you couldn't be in a better position right now. They just wanted to have themselves a lead to secure things. And they still, through all of that chaos, and through a bit of a slower output, they were only down by 3 points heading into the fourth quarter, a truly cinematic time. As I noted, again, where else would you rather be? Two of the best teams in the Western Conference all season long. Through a long, hard-fought, and well-played series, they're going to come into this with an evened-up record, putting it all on the line here in Game 7, and you get a closely contested game heading into the fourth quarter. What more could you ask for? And what better way to potentially usurp the opponent for a victory than in this type of fashion? Literally going toe-to-toe, chess move for chess move, up until you reach that checkmate at the end of the game. So, all eyes, and I mean all eyes, for a series that has set records in viewership, especially with Game 1. All eyes, many eyes, all over the place, were waiting to see just what would happen in the fourth quarter. And clearly, that kind of pressure inadvertently might have meandered through the force field held up by Chet Holmgren at some point of time. By that point of the fourth quarter, the Thunder and Spurs had been trading threes back to back. And I mean it. Like Cason Wallace, as soon as the fourth quarter started, he must have understood what was at stake. Because instantly, he turned his play up a notch after not really contributing all that much in terms of shooting or scoring. Obviously, the defense is exceptional with Cason Wallace. That's why he's an all-defensive team player. But here he is instantly turning up into the fourth quarter, responding in the midst of a wave of Keldon Johnson threes. So he did his job. And meanwhile, they told me that Chet Holmgren, through a graphic, and again I'll have to explain this even later, because, oh my gosh, I'm trying to be nice, I'm trying to be fair about it. You know, Holmgren is the Gonzaga man. You can't excuse 0 shots. You can't excuse 0 shots in the second half of a Game 7 with an NBA Finals appearance on the line. You just can't. When I heard that shit, I'm like, hold on. Say that again. I must be out of my fucking mind. Maybe I didn't hear the broadcast team right. Did you just say Chet Holmgren had 0 shots in an elimination game with the NBA Finals on the fucking line? Am I crazy? Am I tweaking? No, because that's what happened. And if that isn't an egregious problem in and of itself, then me seeing him on the next possession after that second Keldon Johnson 3, the second that I see this man get the ball back from Jalen Williams, he tries to drive on the baseline, and this nigga slips and falls with Wembanyama guarding him. It forces him to put up a very low and inaccurate pass off of the ground to Jared McCain, who then has to subsequently take a shot from 3-point range that he'll fire consistently You don't want to be a player like him who is primarily going to catch the ball and shoot it and have to fade back over a very high contest from the other defender rolling over. Because that's what happened. And to be fair, you can look at that at face value and say that McCain has to hit the shot. He should have known better. Well, that's a horrible fucking pass from Chet Holmgren. That's the real basketball diagnosis. Like, you cannot have a shooter like McCain so reliant on having the ball hit his hands in the correct placement and then proceed to do what the fuck Holmgren was doing on that possession. It's ridiculous. And it continued. The second that shit happened, though, I knew it was cooked for Chet Holmgren. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? What's happening? Man is getting, mind you, I covered all three of them. Shea, the Santa Clara Jalen Williams, who by this point had not appeared because he was actually ruled out for Game 7. I should have started with that. They panned over the camera to him multiple times. I know he wanted to be out there and help that team. But you have to play with the roster provided to you. And Holmgren's out there, also getting paid a 5-year, $240 million contract, and he's falling to the fucking ground in the presence of the player who got unanimous votes in DPOY against him. Unanimous first place finish votes against him. That's how we're coming. That's ridiculous. Again, there's more to be said about that. But for now, even despite that, even despite those struggles from Holmgren, despite those struggles from most of the other starters, Wallace was starting to heat up. SGA was resting for this quarter to start it off, and the Thunder were still within 5. This was still a close fight. And very quickly, it started to, fall down just a little bit. Now, the Spurs were starting to take far more advantage from this defense, rather. I don't know, it just kept spacing them out. They got their shots at will at the rim. They were still hitting three-pointers at such an efficient rate. And that is something that had been carrying over from Game 6, where they set a franchise record in terms of makes in a single quarter from deep range. So clearly that hadn't lost a beat at all. And frankly, to not overstate the point, that could be one of the biggest reasons why they were up right now at this point in the game with about 8 minutes and change left, aside from the amount of turnovers that they'd been forcing at that point. Because by a time in this fourth quarter, they held the 11-point lead at 8 minutes. They had themselves a run of 13-4 to start out the quarter at least settle into the quarter a little more. And also, they had 7 turnovers compared to 14 for the Thunder in this. And again, a team that largely wins by turning you over and getting out in transition and running the floor. And then being so conservative yet aggressive with the ball in their hands themselves. The roles were completely reversed. 14-7? Even if that doesn't sound crazy. In a 9-point game, in a game that had been single digits for a while up to that point, that means everything. And they had also, the Spurs, kind of shortened it up in the offensive rebounding realm. Because that third quarter flipped around everything as well. Another large reason why the Thunder ended up losing control of the lead here up to this point in the fourth quarter. Because they had an 8-1 advantage in offensive rebounds in the third quarter, the Spurs did. Combining all those things together and with them being that accurate already, maybe not even needing them, it was huge. Like, literally, to the point where you have Dylan Harper on several occasions running over, sprinting from the corner of the court to go hustle rebounds. And that's massive effort from the Spurs overall. It's also apparent that the Thunder, at least in that front, I don't know, you have to have a little more pride in yourself there. You can't just constantly allow yourselves to get beaten on the back door like that. You have to step up and keep those bodies out, even if you are just selling out for Wembanyama. There's clearly more to it than that. Foreshadowing as well. Yeah. So this game is seemingly getting out of hand for the Thunder. But a silver lining would come about. With Wembanyama in the earlier parts fouling Alex Caruso and then fouling Isaiah Hartenstein on a dunk, he was actually up to 5 fouls at around 7 minutes and 50 seconds in this game. And instantly, siren alarm, ding, 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 force him to foul out. Will someone, anyone on this Thunder team, go at Wembanyama, force him into an awkward contest, get him to jump around, and bait him into a foul that could have changed everything, that could have taken him out of the game, that could have allowed them to put in Luke Kornet with no other option, and scheme up your offense to go right at him? They were still getting great work from their shooters, mind you. They diminished the lead to 6. So they got that going. And you had SGA still coming out and giving them buckets. They did not, during a single period of time, during that at least minute and 2 second stretch, did they decide to go right at Victor Wembanyama. Not a single time. And I'm telling you right now, that in and of itself was a hugely missed opportunity. Hugely. The Spurs would have had to change every single thing up about their defense if that would have happened. And Castle himself was at 4 also. So they had a couple defenders in foul trouble here. That was the guy that is literally the trump card for everything. Yes, the guards and wings for this Spurs team had been giving these players hell, especially in their wins. The one man that you had to consistently game plan for all the time was going to be Victor Wembanyama on that back end. Do you know how much relief you would have had if you force him to foul out? And in his overall career, it's not something that has happened consistently with him fouling out. But man, now would be the time, more than ever, with your entire season on the line, to force that and make the Spurs bend to your will now, with you having the advantage in big man play. They didn't do it. And then what proceeded to happen next made things even worse. Because for the one time, one of the only times overall in the series, and the only time in this game that they had a positive impact without Wembanyama on the floor, was when shit was about to hit the fan. Because even with me saying all of that, Hartenstein proceeded to rip the ball right out of Dylan Harper's hands at the top of the key on the very next possession, out of the timeout, by the way. He's running, and he's running for his life with what appears to be an open floor in front of him. And as he's going up, as he is rising up for a dunk that could potentially swing the entire momentum of this game, Luke Kornet, the man who had been picked on as a defensive liability, the man who consistently could not step up as a backup and truly win those minutes on the floor at an effective level throughout the entire series. That Luke Cornett turned into the Luke Cornett that has an NBA championship in his trophy room. Because this man, of all people, got a fucking nasty two-handed chase down block against Hartenstein in transition right at the rim. That Spurs bench was lit the hell up at their guy making a play. To us, again, it had been one of the only times that it happened this series. But we don't have to cast that on them. And at that moment, you could hear so much silence befall that arena entirely. Game 7s are all about producing those kinds of plays that you may remember, frankly, forever. For good reasons or bad reasons. Obviously, as a Warriors fan, you know, the shit, yeah. Maybe the impact isn't the same, but there is no way to quantify how important that block right there might have been. And then they proceeded to score on the other end, giving Cornett at that moment a +2 in that quarter for one of literally the only times. And then I kid you not, they proceed to put Wembanyama right back into the game after that. Right back into it. Just a lot of missed opportunities. And yet the Spurs, even with leaving that on the table, they found a way to respond time and time and time again. We were nearing clutch time. But I tell you, hey, it was still looking like the Spurs could close things out. It was just a matter of being careful with the ball. Like, they had that brief 7-2 run. So they were trying to get this over with, eventually pushing the lead up to as much as 11 on multiple occasions, and then 12 further into clutch time, with Dylan Harper, of all people, taking it against SGA and stepping it back, firing it over him, and splashing in another one from deep on the right wing to give them a 107-95 advantage. And that is only after multiple sequences of just hustle from this team. Dylan Harper contributing to it, Victor Wembanyama trying to run Jared McCain all the way the fuck down and trying to contest him from the side. Like, he heard the damn footsteps. They're hard to miss from a person that tall. This entire team was just fully engaged in the moment. And you could almost taste victory from where they were standing. Cason Wallace would not have it. He wouldn't have it. In a game where so many other players on this Thunder team, quite frankly, struggled to be consistent. And even Cason Wallace himself might be a victim of that through the first 3 quarters. But here he was in the fourth, on both ends of the floor, literally, with a one-man show here. Making a 3, being aggressive on defense and forcing steals, and starting to turn this back into the favor of the Thunder. Hitting another timely 3, and then hitting another clutch shot to bring this game all the way down to 6 points just when it was looking. Just when it was looking like the Spurs were going to close everything out. All of a sudden, they were really losing their handle of the ball here. And that is a large testament to the Thunder, in a way, using that last gasp of potential effort. And man, it was a truly valiant one. They were going up until the very end. They were not going to come out of this game regretting the effort that they, as a collective, had tried to put into it. This team and their leader in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, even if he might have missed some shots late, they were still on both ends of the floor trying to be the aggressors. Maybe it might have been a little too late, but it wasn't over until that clock hit triple zeros. And by goodness, they were there with 52 seconds left. But they struggled. As a larger component of this game, they struggled down the stretch to even find room to get off shots. They were able to force another pair of turnovers. Still down by 6 at this point, and after timeouts, yet they could not get anything off. And another thing to take into account here, with the challenges that Dagnall had already used up, to go back to this, the 4-minute 26-second mark, when they were already down by 11, he had used his final timeout. And at that moment, I was also like, oh no. Now again, the challenges were fair, but that is just a misfortunate use of coaching. That is a misfortunate use of clock management. Because, man, that would be one of the best ways to try to draw up something to shorten up the game. But they had no choice to just struggle and then rush up very low percentage looks. And from that point, with everything working against them, the low shot quality, the lack of a timeout, and the pressure from this Spurs defense, you had them force another miss. And as the clock wound down, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, you witnessed this Spurs team in general truly come together in that moment and close out a win of 111 to 103 in this Game 7. The first for many of these players, aside from Harrison Barnes and De'Aaron Fox, to win their right to make the NBA Finals for the first time since 2014. And it was emotional for everyone involved in there, especially Victor Wembanyama. Even after the Devin Vassell dagger dunk to end it, yeah, you ain't gonna try to fight him there. The series done. They're still playing. They're still fighting up to this very point of time. There isn't much of a response that you can have, and you gave it all the fight that you could on the court. They just had to take their loss. As damning as it might have been to suffer that on home court, Spurs ain't gonna give a fuck about that. Walk in your trap, take over your trap. But they were emotional. Wembanyama was emotional about it. Because at that moment, you truly recognized what was at stake here. This team is, again, largely young, largely without playoff experience, and in their first run against pretty much everything panning out against them and being said about them, they have their entire roster in the dance. And that is something truly beautiful to see. When it comes to the Spurs side of things, I will talk about that in just a moment. But I'll focus on the Thunder first, because their season is done. It's wild to see. It is wild to see for the most hardcore Thunder fans out there. But they have been eliminated. They will not repeat. And this continues a trend that I'll also expand on later, talking about this particular game. But the Thunder, you gotta give them their credit. They took this team to the very wire. And if not for those misfortunate misses, this could be a completely different conversation today. A lot had to be right for them, so right, to win this overall series. Especially when you look at the fact that, from their perspective, with no Santa Clara Jalen Williams, a man who can easily contribute a good amount of scoring himself, and A.J. Mitchell off the bench, a man who himself can also contribute a good amount of scoring and playmaking, both of them being out for Game 7 completely after missing so much action in this overall series. And yet they still came within, essentially, 6 points by the end of the game. Lost by 8, but, this is still close most of the way. And if even one of those guys are healthy, they could very well be sitting in the spot to be the very first team to repeat since the mid-2010s Warriors. Instead, they're home suffering as a fan base from full-fledged PTSD right now. They now drop to 12-2 all-time in their history as a franchise when they have been leading 3-2 in a series. And again, you added in now with this series, the last time it happened was again the same time around which, seeing that happen to his own team, Kevin Durant decided to jump ship and was labeled essentially a traitor for leaving to join the Golden State Warriors in July of that same year. That series that set this team back a little bit. Even though they were still in the hunt with some of the star talent that they picked up in theory, it set them back before they had to recalibrate, blow it all up, and then get the championship in 2025. They've been so far removed from that, and yet, still to this point, you get another reminder of it in the overall series here. And frankly, who am I to come up with the reasons in which they lost the overall series, right? I am far removed from the locker room. I don't personally know these players. I don't personally know their schemes and what they intend to do on a game-to-game basis. But largely, when you look at the fact that, on the one end, especially being up 3-2, the fact that they went through as great of a team as they are, as I said in the video, you cannot go on a 20-0 yielded run against a team like that up in the series. And with them consistently having to battle back in most of these games after early slumps and just slow starts over and over and over again, at a point, you can't expect to recover from that all the time. And with some of the same habits picking up from those slow starts over the course of this game, it didn't help their cause. It's not even like overall they shot poorly from the field, but everything else on the margins was just not up to the same par that you would expect from this Thunder team. They shot 44.6% from the field, slightly worse. They had a few less rebounds overall, but most importantly, a 15-to-10 offensive rebounding advantage for the Spurs was allowed by the end of the game. And the Thunder had been dominating that in the first half. They just could not out-hustle this Spurs team. They could not outpace this Spurs team. And that is going to be the defining reason why they lost this series. Over and over again. Even with these closer games, even with games that they won and won outright, the energy was always just 1 or 2 steps ahead for this Spurs team overall. And that is despite them going through the ebbs and flows of a true ground-out series. Because, like them, the Thunder themselves also went through that double overtime in Game 1 and had to play the most minutes that they have, at least in this playoff run. Or, for some players, a career high at that time. They all had to go through it. They, frankly, adjusted to it very well in the next couple of games. And then from Game 4 onward, they just kept allowing the Spurs to, as has been said multiple times now, hit first, and hit first. And they won the series. They had some valiant effort, and you cannot question that with this Thunder team. They're always going to play with that spirit about themselves. And they made this very convincing late in the game. But it is just tough to constantly surrender something like that. And then expect to always have the resources needed to come back. And the only way in which that would have happened is if everything would have been on point from their shooting with everyone being involved. Like I said, once again, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did his fucking part and did it exceptionally well. There isn't much more that you could have asked of him. Even with his efficiency deteriorating by the end of the fourth quarter, he was gassed. He was gassed trying to put in all that energy and time to will this team to victory. And even with that going down, I'm like, they still need more. They're still trailing. They're still down by just a little bit. Just this one thing can go right for the Thunder and change everything. And they never got it. Like, you can't really fault SGA that much here. He had 35 points on 12 of 21 shooting. By far his most efficient game in the series. In 9 assists, along with 3 steals, and a block. Like, he did. He had his best outing. Because an atmosphere, an environment like this in a Game 7 commands that a player give it their best. It commands it. And SGA sees the moment. What is there to complain about? You're going to throw shade at him just because he didn't win, or throw shade at him because some of those points might have been unethical basketball. Look, some of them were fair foul calls, still to this point. And largely, his scoring came through him again, taking it to the defense. In doing what he does best. Even if you can't remove that particular element of his game, you at least gotta appreciate him showcasing that talent in real time and putting it all on the line for Game 7, because that's what you'd want out of a player. And that's what you did not get from many, and I mean many others on this team. Like, genuinely, what the hell is SGA supposed to do at a point? You can say that some of the bench guys were like a bit inconsistent, Although Jalen Williams, the Arkansas one, had an 11.10 rebound double-double. Although Jared McCain had 12 points and 2 threes. And although Alex Caruso did whatever he did, literally shooting 3 of 14 from the field with 12 points. A man who had consistently been hitting timely threes for them, that shot had been falling off a little bit. And again, a 60.6% average through at least the first 4 or 5 games. Like, that is an exceptionally high one to have. At some point, it's about an equilibrium. Like, it's going to balance out at some point. You can't expect to be that accurate every time. It's why Kyle Korver still leads the all-time single-season list in terms of three-point percentage at far over 50%. And that's something that probably will never be broken in terms of the minimum amount of attempts it would take to get there. Like, that's going to level itself out. So you could chalk it up to that. Also, I could provide a disclaimer there, because some of those shots came with him on the same foul that Wembanyama had against him. He, banged up his wrist. So you can just approach that with maybe a little bit of caution and leniency in the fourth quarter shooting for him. Because it was his shooting wrist. And that is just always going to be tough on a player, admittedly. But injury or not, you didn't really get too much from all these other players. And then you get to the starters. I mean, Isaiah Hartenstein had a couple of those floaters going, but had just 7 points, and you're not expecting him to be a scorer. Lucius Dort continued stinking up the fucking game, literally taking only 4 shots and nabbing only 3 points in a series where, overall, again, he just was not effective. This was a series that was always going to come down to the wire. It's why people were predicting that this shit was going to go to 7. We understood what time it was. So, for the series to be this close, for the Thunder to still be in the fight at this very point in time, and yet you look and you see what the hell Lucius Dort did throughout this entire series, it'll blow your mind. Literally, for the entire series, this man proceeded to shoot 5 of 25 from 3. Are you serious? Are you out of your fucking mind? What the fuck? 5 of 25 from 3 for a man who is supposed to be one of their better 3-point shooters. That man was launching bricks each and every single fucking game. And to be generous, his defense in ways for this Thunder team, to their thinking, it is valuable enough to where even if the shot isn't falling, you know he's going to provide that hustle. And on occasion, he did. You didn't really get that a whole lot. And it wasn't as important as they were looking for it to be. So it just made things really weird with having it out there, let alone starting. And they changed up the lineup in the second half as a result of it, at least the one to start. The man only finished with 16 minutes played. So they already understood that he was an aggressive minus, an aggressive negative when he was on the court. And that was the large reason why. And then Chet Holmgren. Dear goodness. Gonzaga man, yes, bro. Look, man. This shit is fucking crazy, dog. No shots in the second half. I've already explained that. Then in the rebounding phase, which he had literally put up a double-double in both of the last games, you have him just being so chaotic with trying to save a couple of the balls going out of bounds on the last few possessions in the fourth quarter, while simultaneously not putting forth that same kind of effort on the glass to keep other players off of the rim. And then throughout the entire game, this nigga has lost his mind. You are getting paid that kind of money because they believe that you are a core piece for what could be a potential dynasty in the making for this Thunder team. And seeing yourself as one of the core players, you are not willing, by any stretch of the imagination, to just try to get a shot to fall. It was not really something he'd focused on this entire series, which could also be a reason if you're trying to scapegoat just him, despite this being a very terrible game. From this standard, you have to try to do more than that. It has to click in your head at some point. Like, the way that I would put it personally is that it is one thing, as he was kind of alluding to in the interviews that he had involved himself in after the game. He was essentially saying that he was trying to do what was best for the team. And to a point, you can understand where he may be coming from in a different scenario where a lot of different people are struggling, where Shea is maybe struggling as well, and you're trying to pick your different teammates up. That can be understood from time to time. It's one thing to play in a high-stakes game like this, understand that you may not have it, and completely defer to your teammates. It's one thing to play in a high-stakes game and understand that you have the ability to change the outcome entirely and flip the script and choose not to. And I think that is where Holmgren fell, which made no sense. Like, you're trying to trust your teammates, but seeing the flow of this game, it was SGA, largely for these three quarters, accounting for everything. And there were moments where Holmgren could have very well taken advantage. Very much so. Especially in the non-Wembanyama minutes. Like, at some point, this man was hoeing you, dude. You have got to fucking man up and take it at him at some times. I don't care about the quote that he had about smart aggression when attacking Wembanyama, because even if you are out there playing reckless, you have to at least put that on the line in Game 7. All bets are off. In some of those cases, there is no such thing as structure. Shit happens. And sometimes you have to be the one to force that action. And at no point did Chet Holmgren proceed to do exactly that. Even when Wembanyama was off the court, which he had actually done a decent job of attacking those kinds of matchups for the first quarter in Game 5. He had shown that he can, at the very least, from time to time, take some of the pressure off. And then that was it. You left one of your co-stars out to fucking draw. You left the team out to draw. Again, if you don't have it, you don't have it. But at least we're known that you are trying to make it a point to go out there and score and shoot the damn ball. At least we come away with that knowledge. Cason Wallace had 14 points in the fourth quarter, doing nothing but shooting the ball. Alex Caruso, even with his 14 shot attempts and making only 3, he shot more time. He fucking 7x'd the amount of shot attempts that Holmgren had in this series. Think about that. In an elimination game, one of your higher paid players are being out attempted in terms of shots by a player in Caruso who was signed for like 3 years, $87 million. What the fuck? McCain even outshot him. And even Lucian Dort, with the bricks that he lined up in his 16 minutes of play, less than half of what Chet Holmgren played in this game, he still shot double the attempts that Holmgren had. Like, this is insane. At some point, you have to put it on your shoulders. Because while SGA can do it over and over and over again with those kinds of nights, he is out there taking each and every single breath to execute in that way, and it is hurting him. And you, as the co-star that he looked to, can't do a damn thing. That entire press conference from the game 4, I believe it was just so damn telling. Again, the second that they asked that question about Chet Holmgren trying to get more involved, trying to get Chet Holmgren more involved in this series, and you had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander hit him with the nastiest, like that long pause after that question about you spoke volumes more than anything else that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander said, which was actually profound, which was actually something that they tried to put to form. It made sense, and it instantly led to him doing what he did in the first quarter of Game 5 before completely regressing again. So I don't know what it is. And then to get back to my point, it's another thing entirely to be in this Game 7. Know that you have the ability to change the entire outcome of the game, to truly seize it by the horns, and to go out and tell the world that I'm going to put it on me. I'm going to be the reason why we win or lose this game. Full throttle. And that is what Wembanyama did. And that is what Wembanyama has been doing this whole series. Regardless of whatever motivation he might have needed, by literally losing to you in a U19 game from more than 6 years ago. Or U19, probably more like 5 and some change by now. You can harbor that for that long. And he is using it as fuel to literally spank the shit out of you. Every time he sees you on the court, he's bumping into you, he's jamming it in your face, and you have no response. It doesn't even have to be about Holmgren personally going at him, but at the very least, something has to light a fire under your ass. Do you need to be sent to a boot camp or something? Go out there and do far more than 4 points and 4 fucking rebounds. Insanity. And that last point I made is the greatest separator when it comes to those two. Which is something that a lot of people could say. There could be an obvious skill gap. There could be an obvious talent gap. But when it comes to that mindset, Chet Holmgren must clearly not be there yet. And that is going to be the challenge for him throughout this summer. Because he has the skill and the talent, even if it is somewhat, just a little lesser than what Wembanyama provides. There is a mental block, there is something going on up there that he has to be able to escape or push right through to get to that second gear as a player who isn't going to be passive in a moment like this, who is actually going to be the secondary proprietor of this team's success when the situation presents itself, like this one, blatantly so. And he had nothing to show for it. For this Thunder team overall, as I kind of alluded to, they're going to be back. Now, things get more expensive for them, especially with all of those long-term contract extensions that all of Williams, Holmgren, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander have signed. So it can still make things a little tougher for them. And in terms of re-signing some of these players, unless they're truly bought in to the idea of potentially getting back to another championship, it may be hard to convince some of them to return. It might be hard to. Because, especially when you see like some of these players out here, not AJ Mitchell particularly, not Jared McCain, he just got here. But you think about the guys like Isaiah Joe, you think about the guys like Aaron Wiggins, who, again, clearly they've bought in on some level. You know, they haven't gotten a lot of burn, yet did contribute to the team winning a championship last season. So they know what comes with the territory. But they could also very well be looking for expanded roles and might choose to leave. Those are real conversations that the Thunder are going to have. And then there have also just been other rumors about them potentially going after another superstar. The Giannis talk has started up again, because they, for years, have been saying that, hey, maybe this Thunder team should go out and trade all their assets for Giannis Antetokounmpo. And this was before Jalen Williams even became this co-star to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, before they got this trio together and then signed on these long-term deals. And now they're talking about potentially involving one of these guys in a trade to send them to Milwaukee. I don't really buy that at all. I don't. So I'm not going to give that a ton of merit. It is something to watch, but I don't expect that to happen at all. Crazier things always go down in the moratorium for free agency. But it is coming up. And the Thunder as well also have a lottery pick in this draft. So they're still just going to retool. They're still going to retool. They'll get back here. They'll see this Spurs team again. Like, these guys aren't going anywhere. I've already said that. That is the most telling insight that I can provide on my end. The road gets a little more difficult, especially as some of these West teams look to get better. And as some of the, restrictions that come with the second apron, they aren't dealing with it now. They're teetering towards it. So they're going to have to be careful and mindful with that in terms of how they construct their roster. But with this core, and with you being that close to a repeat of the NBA Finals, I mean, even though you didn't get the result that you wanted, you still understand that this is a team that is built to last. And so you're confident in that if you are Sam Presti in this overall team. But it is all about, finding a way to do it again. Like, they won it last year. It is always hard to repeat. And you have to just be in the right mindset to push you over that edge to do it. But now onto the Spurs team. And man, what a time for the Spurs fans out there. What a time. Through the Kawhi years that had gone haywire after 2014, with him getting fouled dirty by Zaza Pachulia, and then having a bit of a contentious relationship with the team before being sent to Toronto, winning a championship, being sent to LA, having that trade lead to the Thunder getting a championship before they themselves could even return to playoff form. Quite literally, the Spurs fans, after they started this Tim Duncan dynasty, and after it ended in 2016, have been through probably one of the worst stretches that the majority of their fan base has gone through in quite some time. And yet, With a run like this, it gives them hope for a new era of basketball entirely. I mean, my goodness, up and down this roster, these are players that were not expected to be here. Wembanyama is just 22 in his third season, and with that, he's there. Winning the Western Conference Finals MVP in the same fell swoop after this game, putting up 22, 7, and 2 on 7-15 shooting with 3 threes, and for the series overall, averaging 27.3 points, 10.9 rebounds, and 2.7 blocks per game on 48.1% shooting and 40% shooting from 3, making him the youngest player to ever win a conference finals MVP and the first player all time to put up at least 15 three-pointers and 15 or more blocks in a series. This is a world-class player. And he has shown that through the entire season, especially when he got back healthy again. There is literally no way, when that man is playing at his best, there are very few answers that you have for him. And even if you do choose some of those answers, they are going to come back to hurt you in some way, shape, or form. He is just that talented. And for them to be in this position right now is in large part due to getting him and having this pool of historically great players to learn from. It don't get much better for this team overall, as young as they are. And it doesn't get better for Mitch Johnson, who is also the fourth youngest coach, along with Tyronn Lue, Joe Mazzulla, and ironically enough, Mike Brown, to make their first NBA Finals. Fourth youngest. They may not be fully wet behind their ears. How ironic is it for me to say that, right? Yet, they happen to be led by legend after legend. George Gervin, David Robinson, Patty Mills, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and Greg Popovich. Mostly Hall of Famers, if not all of them. And that is who these players are learning from each and every single time. It is the San Antonio way. And you'd seen it for years when they were at the height of their powers. Even when Popovich himself was going through some of the worst seasons as a coach. And that could also be a byproduct of the team just not being up to par with everyone else at that time. Still keeping that class about himself. And still trying to keep this team and their chemistry as congealed as possible. The fact that even after him, and again, this is a testament to how some of these other coaches can be right to some of these young players. You're telling me that this man had to step down from his coaching post after literally suffering a stroke. In all of his public appearances, as great as it is to see him moving around, it is still very clear that he may not be in the best shape up to that point. Because at that age, it is much more difficult to recover from a health issue in general, let alone a stroke. And he is still making it a point to, after several games in this series, including Game 3, as De'Aaron Fox was talking about, coming in there with a passion to chew this team out. And the players have respect for it because they know that it is coming out of love and care for them. That shit matters. And when you see what this Spurs team was doing out here for this overall series, it has rubbed off on them in the most positive of ways. Everybody might have been looking to the Thunder to get here, just off of potential talent alone. You cannot beat the team that is going to play for one another. And at more times in this series, it felt like the Spurs were doing so. Even with Stephon Castle going through his rough stretches, you had Fox on the stat sheet, on the court, and behind the scenes literally pick him up. Dylan Harper was out for all this time, no sweat. Carter Bryant. We all saw the clip go around. It is your opinion to suggest whether or not he was crying. And yet in each and every single game after that spat with Johnson, which he just took on the chin. He didn't even say anything. He might have had that response. He did not talk back at all. And he proceeded to play with that fucking desire to win in each and every single game after that, regardless of the mistakes that he might have been making. Champagnie went on a heater because in this game, he had 20 points on 6 of 11 shooting with 6 threes as well, and was hustling his ass off on the boards also. He became the first player since 2016 with both Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson to put up at least 6 threes in a Game 7 of this Western Conference Finals. And it is also, this game, the second 20-point game of his entire playoff career, and the second one that he had in this series, despite the struggles that he had been having in games 1 through 4. You cannot make that up. That is for a reason. Like the Spurs team overall as well, looking at that 3-point shooting, they shot 17 of 40 from the field on 42.5% from 3, setting a franchise record in that respect in a Game 7 as well. That synergy led to the consistency on the court and at the best possible time. There is literally no greater example of it happening than this. Even with this game being close, they found a way to push through all of it. Even when things are getting sloppy at the end, they found a way to push through all of it and get the job done, so that they secured this win, largely in most of these guys' first playoff runs. Champagnie has not been involved in this. And even he was mentioning the fact that Daryl Morey's stupid ass waived him in 2023 just to give Mac McClung another shot at winning the dunk contest. And niggas want to question why he was fired. What the fuck? Just for that, to not even give McClung a roster spot on the actual team for the long term. Stupid shit. Now look at Champagnie now. At least Julian. He's now got a chance to compete for an NBA title. And Champagnie himself is also weirdly young. Weirdly young. Like, he's only coming to the NBA recently. I was trying to see how old the man was, because I was questioning it. And he himself is right around that age of like 25 too. So I found that to be incredibly surprising. Like, that is insane. Yeah, 24 years old. He'll be 25 on June 29th. Likely after the NBA Finals. And maybe for an early birthday present, he himself will want to be holding that trophy and potentially waiting on a ring. But as the Spurs team, you're not thinking that far out yet. Of course not. Any number of things can happen. But they can say that they are in the dance. They're in the big one for the last series of the overall season. And they earned it. Stephon Castle as well kind of went through a rougher stretch in turnovers, but his aggressiveness early on continued to set the tone, putting up 16 points and 6 assists, also with 6 rebounds, and making 7 of 15 shots from the field. De'Aaron Fox also played very solid in this game, still taking the pressure off and having one of his more accurate games offensively, even if he wasn't at 100%. You know, like 15 points on 6 of 12 shooting isn't going to jump off the page, but those 3 3-pointers and those 5 assists and those 3 steals, all of them were true impact plays that either sparked runs for the Spurs team or at least kept the energy going for some of these runs to continue. And Fox is going to get all the credit for that. So Dylan Harper, a dagger 3-pointer like that and being that accurate from 3 when he's not a 3-point shooter, going 2 of 3 out there in shooting for 12 points himself. Vassell and Johnson also had 11 points each in this game. Everybody came out to perform. And it was just full strength on strength. 2 of the Titans in the entire league, mind you, duking it out like this. As I said, this series kind of shaped out to be something of attrition, with both Williams and Mitchell being out. But if this series doesn't express to you how deep this Spurs team can go, I don't know what to say to you. Castle and Harper are only 20 and 21 years old each. And yet still, they're being asked that much, and they're delivering. They may have to go through some growing pains every now and then, but they're delivering. You can't put a price tag on that. Like, that is just extremely valuable. And if the Spurs can keep it up, they could very well put themselves in that position to win an NBA title. Very much so. Like I said, they have earned it. The fact that this team was projected to finish with 43 wins before the regular season even kicked off. They have done nothing but exceeded expectations all year. And while going 12-6 through this playoff run, again, in the same way that the Thunder made it, having to go through this battle with them, you get an instant delve deeper into the new guard of the NBA by having the Spurs get here. And rather than keeping the repeating trend going, they have a chance to participate against the Knicks in an NBA Finals that will produce its 8th straight non-repeating winner. The longest streak in NBA history. As I noted, parity is alive in the NBA. You gotta love it. Regardless of everything that might be said about tanking and how bad some of those teams are, when these guys get into the playoffs, it is something that in certain cases, especially with like the 1-8 seeds and things like that, from time to time, they are expected to be in favor of the higher seed. But in theory, with these series being out there, with them all being best of 7 now, it is anybody's game. Anybody in that pool has a chance to get here. And the Spurs made it out of a tough-ass Western Conference. going through Portland, maybe a little bit of a lighter matchup. Going through Minnesota, and going through the reigning champs to get here. That is something that has to be respected. You can't count that out about this team. And you can't discount that from them no matter what happens, quite frankly. Gotta respect that. I tell you, man. And it's crazy as well, because to get into that aspect of things, this could have backfired mightily, but with this run, and with this team performing the way that they have, especially defensively, one of their staffers has gotten himself a job, because per Shams Charania, prior to Game 7, he detailed, per report, that the Orlando Magic hired Sean Sweeney as their new head coach. Sweeney, over the course of this entire season, being the Spurs assistant, he has gotten praise, and high praise, for the defense that he has initiated for this team and incorporated into the games that they've played throughout the year. It has produced one of the best. They were one of the top teams in defensive rating, and certainly across the board in terms of different metrics here. Even when you go into the advanced numbers, flat out one of the more dominant ones across the entire league. You'd heard about some of the numbers in the previous series, where Wembanyama held this overall Timberwolves team to an 87 net rating when he was on the floor. The fact that he was a plus 62 in this series, with Luke Cornett being such a net negative that I think the difference was like a 94-point swing. Clearly, he makes up for a lot, but this defense is strong overall. These players fit in that system very well, and the Magic are hoping that the same thing can happen for them. This isn't about them, but it is clear to make that point that on the Spurs end, they're losing. We'll lose him at the end of the season, no matter what happens. And they're just hoping that by that point, they can have Sweeney rewarded with the ultimate thing, a championship ring, for his contributions. One more series and 4 more games potentially that could result in wins or losses depending on what may happen, to go out there and play for him one last time. That is real crazy when you think about it. But I do think that it is a good hire. Just had to explain that. And honestly, that in of itself might save me from having to bring it up in a potential video that I might have to do, talking about different NBA developments as well. So all that's going on for the Spurs right now. And they're still riding high right now as of the recording of this video, celebrating a little bit, and obviously trying to prepare and rest. They'll be in there on short notice, but they're there. What are you going to say now? Everybody trying to talk stuff about them. What are you going to say? You can't argue with that. And then on a side note, to just tie it back in, and I guess round it out, because honestly in that other video, I might just wait till then to go further into the series itself with how long this has been. But during the series, SGA's lawyers filed a cease and desist on behalf of him for the ad that Underdog Sports ran with Dillon Brooks as well, advertising this unethical hoops game, where if you didn't see the trailer for it, or the promo ad that they put out, you have to pull basketballs out of SGA's body on the board without fouling him. And they had this damn, like, I don't know how to say it was really made. It was grainy, had some animation to it. They pumped that out. Same kind of likeness, same kind of jersey style. You'd get the point of the ad if you'd watched it. So from that perspective, you know, it must have come across someone from his representation. I do not believe that he called up his lawyers like goons and told them, hey, they're defaming me. They're defaming my name and I can't have it. Go out there and sue them now. No, I don't believe that he said that. I don't believe he called them to do that. Someone from his representation must have alerted them. It could be an agent, it could be someone from his team. And he probably got lawyers from there to then legally file the motion. Like, these guys aren't henchmen. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander didn't fucking send them out to do his dirty work. Like, that's wild. As fun and exciting as that narrative would be for some people to say, oh, the flopper got the fucking tail caught and now wants to make all this fuss about it. Dog, that's not what's happening here. That's not what's going on at all. But it is kind of a crazy thing to have that come out at that time. And that came out via The Athletic. It was just a crazy sequence of time. Like, damn, I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, man, I tell you, bro. So, that is wild, man. I tell you, dude. I mean, what in the absolute fuck is going on with that, bro? Like, that shit's crazy, man. It does look wild. I know that some of SGA's biggest critics and most egregious haters out there, I know they would love to run with that and say that this is all his doing. And he literally put the lawyers in a hostage situation and told them, yeah, you're gonna do this for me, or I'm going to fire you. I'm going to let you go. Or I have some blackmail on you, and I'm going to release it to the public if you don't do this for me. Like he's the fucking Godfather or something. Dude, no. Okay? This was all done through legal work in a long, grueling process. Even if it did only take like a couple days. There's a lot that goes into it. That's not on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And the thing about flopping had been changing for him. Ironically enough, like it's still going, but he had literally been seen changing up the approach in his game a little bit as a result of hearing the noise. So from that standpoint, you can understand why people may say, it's getting to him. It's getting to him. Cat's out of the bag now, motherfucker. Alright, like, come on, man. But yeah, the Spurs and the Knicks are set for the finals. What a long time to get there through the regular season, through 3 rounds now of the playoffs. And now, in just a matter of a few short days, literally on Wednesday, Game 1 will be set in motion. Just gotta love that passion and that energy Because if you don't like that, as they say, you don't like NBA basketball, damn it. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.